if I had to sum up TMT, the TMT industry group in one word over the last 10 years or so, it would be change. What we're seeing is a huge level, an unprecedented level of change across the T, the M and the T, technology, media and telcos. Underpinning all this is the digital revolution. An ever-increasing amount of content is now consumed digitally across an ever-increasing number of different platforms. And what this is meaning for the companies that we work with is both a huge level of opportunity, but also an unprecedented level of challenge. So we're seeing media organisations, for example, move from a traditional print model right the way through to where they're getting to now, which is ever increasingly reliant on their digital offerings. Digital offerings often being a lot more global than their fairly localised print models. And these companies are having to make this transition against the backdrop of real pressure on their revenues, as the revenues are dropping based on their traditional revenue streams falling away a little bit. We've got the telco companies facing an exponentially increased level of data across their networks, so real capacity issues there. At the same time that us as consumers are much more savvy about technology. We're much more careful about overseas roaming, for example, and there are many more regulations in place to suppress this. So telco companies are facing real pressure on their margins, at the same time as having to deliver network capacity that can handle almost infinitely more amounts of volume than they had 10 years ago. And finally, you've got the tech companies, which many people perceive as the winners at the moment, especially the big West Coast of America, beasts like Amazon, Apple, and so on and so forth, and Google. These companies are now getting involved increasingly in different places of the TMT value chain, right the way through from content creation, with Google owning YouTube, for example, right the way through to how content is delivered to us as end users. So in summary, TMT is undergoing a period of unprecedented change at the moment, with new business models coming in, new competitors coming in, and all of this change against the backdrop of real pressure on revenue and margin, and also an increased level of regulation. All this change across TMT is having a huge impact on internal audit functions that we work with on a day-to-day basis. They're being asked to look at an ever-increasing number of risks and a real changing risk profile, and a risk profile that changes very rapidly, so that the risks they're being asked to assure today are perhaps not the same as the ones they were being asked to assure, or indeed recruited to assure 2 years ago. So we're seeing them respond in a whole number of ways. Firstly, we're seeing them use other assurance providers much more effectively than they have in the past. So rather than just rely on their own plan to deal with the risks that they've identified, working out who across their organisations is also providing assurance. So rather than just relying on themselves to audit and assure every risk that the business faces, they are increasingly identifying and using the work of other functions around the organisation that provide some level of assurance. Secondly, we're seeing functions work increasingly with analytical tools, so using data analytics to make their auditing more effective and to make it more efficient, work smarter essentially. And thirdly, we're seeing an ever-increasing number of functions use third-party expertise to supplement their own skills around particular risk areas, maybe cybersecurity or use of the cloud, for example. And that third-party resource is either coming from internally within the organisation, with guest audit programs, if you like, so people from one part of the business providing expertise in auditing another part of the business, or from third-party providers who can provide up-to-date specialist expertise in particular areas of risk.